Hello, everybody. Officially, hello. I'm Solana. I'm with Open Knowledge's AI Learning Labs, and I'm excited to host this open roundtable conversation. It's going to be the first of a series. The AI Learning Labs is a new initiative of the Open Knowledge Foundation, and the idea is to figure out together, how do we learn about AI? We've all got questions. And especially, I think, in the nonprofit sector, well, actually all sectors, everybody's trying to figure out what to do with AI and what not to do with AI. And those of us who are trying to use tech for different public purposes, public good, are also, I think, overwhelmed with a lot of different options, different paths we can take to achieve a goal. And so this learning lab, the idea is to create a structure around, well, if we have a question, we have a challenge, we have an organization, specific organization, how can we follow along in the process of an organization learning how to do something and share perspectives broadly in the open knowledge community and with other people who have been working on similar topics, similar themes, and then sort of accompany people and organizations as they figure out what to do for themselves. Part of what we're doing with the learning labs is helping specific organizations with specific things they want to do. And then we're also going to be developing some learning materials, some online courses, so that other organizations that are facing similar challenges follow in their footsteps. This conversation, I think we need a muted microphone from somebody. Yeah, just you're not speaking. Let's see. Yeah, there's some echo. I think it's when the microphones aren't muted from some of the non-speakers. So this conversation, we assembled some really interesting folks for you to hear from. We'd like to hear from you as well in the room. I mentioned before that you're very welcome to introduce yourselves in the chat. We're going to start with a short introduction from my colleague in this project, Gita. Gita is going to tell you about what we're doing in terms of this responsible climate chatbot. What is this theme? What are we doing? What's going on? And then we have 3 speakers that we'd like to introduce you to. And we're going to be thinking about how climate knowledge is curated, how it's made ready for AI, what are the different choices of AI models and architectures, and what are the different considerations around trust and bias and misinformation, and how do we use all this for education? Kind of big questions, but we're trying to keep it at a practical level of what do you do and how can you do something? In the second half of the call, we'll be inviting input from all of you. You're welcome to ask questions or make comments in the chat along the way. Again, my name is Solana. I'm with the Open Knowledge Foundation. Let's get started. Gita, over to you.
Thank you very much, Solana. Good to know there is no background is just now between us. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'm especially happy to be joining from the National Institute of Plant Genome Research and the Global South, because one of the central questions behind this workshop is not simply how we build climate AI, but for whom we are building it, who gets represented in it, and who gets left out. Of researcher at, of course, New Delhi for the last 20 years. My work is science, food security, and biodiversity informatics. I'm also the co-founder, and I'm Very glad to be here today to get to know who have not been in the chat box. You to please tell us about yourselves. This workshop and this conversation is being recorded, so we would be coming back to your chats, and we would be very interested in knowing, having your feedback about this conversation. This session that we are doing today is part, of course, of the Open Knowledge Foundation's AI Learning Lab. Has everybody. Question today is a very simple one, quite a deceptively simple one, actually. The question is, how do we build a climate chatbot that is actually trustworthy? When I say trustworthy, I don't mean just a functional chatbot, but a bot that is reliable, transparent, responsible, genuinely useful for learners who are trying to navigate an increasingly noisy information landscape. AI tools are now everywhere. Each one of us is using not just one or two, but sometimes multiple AI tools every day. But when it comes to climate change, we face a very serious challenge. Information is complex. It is also uncertain, and uncertainty is a real thing, and misinformation spreads very fast through this organic network between people and the digital world. So from the perspective of the global South, there are a few additional concerns. These are global concerns that I just told you about misinformation and so on, but certain additional concerns that we particularly face in the global South are, first of all, who has access to these tools about knowledge sharing? Whose knowledge systems are being represented when we are talking about such tools? 3, what are the languages that are being supported in solutions? 4, without expensive infrastructures or technical not available in certain spaces in the global South. And finally, can these tools remain open and accessible rather than becoming gated technologies where you only have access if you can pay or come through the paywalls? So finally, the question that overall that I think we are asking, compared to the deceptively simple question that I had put earlier, what can AI do? The question we are really asking is, how should AI be designed when knowledge itself is complex, evolving, it's deeply connected to the society that is using that knowledge, right? And at Semantic Climate, therefore, which I'm very happy to introduce to you today, at Semantic Climate, our work does not begin with models, does not begin with direct answers to all questions. Over the past 10 years, over the past 12 years, actually, since Peter Murray Rust at Cambridge University and I came together, and more so in the last 4 or 5 years, in Semantic, we have been working on extracting biodiversity and environmental knowledge from a large amount of scientific literature. We have PhD students doing the coming in. We are consistently turning text into structured, machine-readable, reusable knowledge systems. This involves A, identifying trusted sources, B, structuring the information from those trusted sources, C, making this information fair, not just structured. So when I say fair, it isn't really about, it has to be about data being findable for F, accessible for A, interoperable for I, and reusable for R. But this was the definition of fair way back in 2014. From been looking at, and that is F for fully AI ready. So is the data fully AI ready? And then we build AI systems on top of the foundation that we build on these structured data sets. So for us and Semantic Climate, AI is not just a starting point. It is not the starting point at all. It is the final layer in a much longer pipeline. What we are doing here is extending that same approach to climate knowledge and climate learning as part of today's session. And this is where the Climate Academy's contribution becomes extremely, extremely important. What the Climate Academy have done is that they have articulated a very ambitious and thoughtful vision for what the chatbot that we want to build should be able to do. And of course, they are clear that it should not just answer questions, but explain climate through a systems perspective by connecting data to real world consequences and communicating particularly clearly to the newer, younger, modern learners who have an incredibly tiny attention span, and yet not just being able to convey this to these modern learners, but remain grounded in trusted scientific sources. Okay. So at this point, I have a very important clarification to make. What we are discussing today is not merely a list of chatbot features. It is a conversation about values, about knowledge design, about responsibility, and about asking the question of what kinds of design decisions allow AI systems to reflect the values that are important to us globally, but more so here in the global south. Now, very briefly, I'm going to explain the practical approach that we are experimenting with in this current prototype. And for this, I have to thank my newest, latest, youngest PhD student, Udita Agarwal, who is with us today among the participants, as well as the work that Alina, one of our interns, has done with my colleague and co-founder, Peter Murray Rust, over the last couple of weeks. The current prototype that we have combines semantic search over Climate Academy's learning materials with a lightweight retrieval-based chatbot architecture. We are experimenting with local embeddings, ChromaDB vector indexing, and grounded LLM responses connected to a curated source material rather than completely unrestricted web outputs that you would generally get when you ask a question on the www. Or on one of the generative AI platforms. Importantly, we are also thinking very carefully about accessibility, about deployment, and one of our priorities is to ensure that, that these systems can eventually work across low resource environments and be accessible without requiring specialized hardware and without requiring technical expertise from the users. So the chatbot pipeline begins with a trusted educational and scientific content. In this case, it is the Climate Academy's learning materials, together with curated climate literature and reports. These materials are then transformed into machine-readable semantic chunks, as I told you earlier, and indexed into a vector database. We then use semantic search and embeddings, right, to retrieve the most relevant knowledge to the query by a user. And for this, we are constantly testing, retesting, and feeding the tests, iterating over this cycle to improve the model, or to improve the bot. The important point here is that the chatbot is not simply hallucinating, or it's not simply plucking answers.
Accidentally got muted. Or disconnected. Potentially disconnected.
So NIPGR sometimes has some connection problems. I don't know if Udita can perhaps take over from Gita while she gets reconnected.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to, Udita?
I think she is going to connect. Like till now, till the time she gets connected, I can explain you. Like, hello everyone. I'm Udita, and I'm a PhD scholar, a student under Dr. Gitanjali Yadav, and I've just joined recently. So when we were talking about this chatbot, when Gitanjali ma'am talked this chatbot to me, like what this chatbot is all about, I was able to understand like this chatbot we are building for high school students and basically school students who does not have that much knowledge about climate, and at the same point of the time we want to give them a accurate information, to give them accurate information about climate, what is climate is all about, so that they know like whatever the information they are getting, they are not being manipulated by somebody else. It is true information. It is true and correct information. That is, I think, one of the major aspect that semantic climate we are working on, that the knowledge should be correct and it should be open. So, keeping that in mind, we thought about creating a chatbot. So, when we were creating a chatbot, so we needed a good source, a source from where we get authentic information. For that, we have used Matthew Pye book, Climate Academy book, to use as a source for the chatbot. So, that is the part of the chatbot. And then comes the technical aspect of the chatbot. So, while we were creating the chatbot, we had look for various approaches, that how to build it, when to build it, and basically like in research you search something that is already there. So while we were looking for different approaches to build the chatbot, we went again to already like what has been done by our interns in semantic climate. And when we were looking through that work, we found out like there's an intern in semantic climate, Anna, which has already built a chatbot, and she have a flow chart for that. So we thought, why not use it, as a base model and then create on it. So we got that model, we studied it, and that is why I think open source is so important, because it was available in GitHub, and if it was not available, then we need to like spend more time to understand from where should we start. But it was available, that is why we were able to do it. So from there we got our chatbot. Like from that was a starting point. So after we built a starting point, we created a kind of a prototype right now, which I think when Gitanjali ma'am will come and she will explain, like she has the entire slides for that, so she will explain like how that prototype
Can you hear me?
basically works.
Can you?
Yes, ma'am, over.
No, continue, please. You're doing very well. Continue. Am I audible, visible? What's going on?
Yeah, you disappeared.
Yes, ma'am.
You disappeared for a moment, and Udita picked up where you left off.
She did a great job. Let us continue.
Fantastic.
Udita, please continue. What were you saying? Or are we done? Have you explained the method and the approach we are using? I think that was what I was trying to talk about. It's all right.
Yeah, like
Good
the
one.
methods and the approaches that we are, ma'am, if you can show the slide, I think it would be better if you explain it much.
All right, no worries. I was basically saying that the current prototype that Udita and the team have been exploring is looking at local embeddings in very lightweight infrastructures in order to meet the basic demands that, or the basic requirements that we have put to the chatbot. It is also a very conversational guardrail system that we've put around it, and we have multiple multilingual possibilities as well within it, which we are going to improve over the next couple of weeks and months. Of course, we have a RAG approach, which is a retrieval augmented generation approach, in architectures that are going to be eventually supporting low resource and globally distributed educational environments, because accessibility, of course, is most important for us. We do not want... Solana?
Yeah, you can finish your sentence.
I was saying we do not want climate AI to become something that only works on expensive systems. That is the biggest downside of it, or in elitist kind of institutions, or behind commercial barriers. There's nothing commercial. This is totally open. We are open. Everything we do is open notebook science. And with that, thank you again for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this discussion further.
Yes, I was going to highlight that you addressed one of the questions already, because there's people offering to contribute to the project. If there are any links and resources for folks to get in touch with the team if they want to collaborate, I think that would be great to share it in the chat, and we'll also be sharing more information after this call. I wonder if we could pivot to the speakers that we invited to help us talk about these different themes that you've highlighted, because on the one side, there's this project that we're building that Semantic Climate and the Climate Academy are working on together. And then there's the larger concern, I think, that all of us are looking at and that we wanted to use this roundtable to reflect on. And I thought, I mean, perhaps we could begin with, do you have somebody you would like to begin with? We have 3 speakers. Gita, do you have a preference?
No, not particularly. So why don't we begin with Adrianna and an educational perspective? How about that? I would. Can I share a little slide for a background on Adrianna, so everybody who's here can get to know who she is?
I don't know. You can try.
A link. I'm going to send you a link, and if you can broadcast that link, it's just a Canva slide for speakers where everybody can get to know speakers. Why don't we do that? Here it is, and I'm putting it into the chatbot where you can everybody can see, but more importantly, you can broadcast it. Solana.
Let me see if I can.
Yeah.
Try.
Are you able to see? Is the link working?
The link is working and I can see it. I'm not sure that I can broadcast. I don't know how. I suggest just keep talking.
Okay. So we have Adrianna with us. Adrianna Baravalle is the director of the Exponential Technologies Laboratory at the University of Austral in Argentina. Adrianna is an academic researcher and she's an educator with extensive international experience in artificial intelligence, data science, cybersecurity, and responsible innovation. She is also the founder of Synapsis AI and the co-founder of the think tanks Quantum AI and Health AI in Argentina. Adrianna, over to you.
I think.
Thank you, Gita. Thank you, Peter, for inviting me here. It's an honor for me to represent my country here and to show or to share the voice of Latin America. When we talk about responsible climate AI, we often center the global north infrastructure, datasets, and design assumptions. Latin America has a different set of questions to ask. I will be brief and direct. Currently, the most accessible climate information tool for young people in Latin America is a conventional chatbot, one that responds with confidence, but cannot tell you whether its sources are peer-reviewed science or a 3-year-old commentary. That is not a neutral tool. It is an epistemological black box. And we are handing it to students who have not yet built the critical frameworks to analyze it. The right question is the one this project poses. How do we build something better? I will put the focus on the impact on young students. The stakes becomes especially clear when we look at young students. Adolescents and university students are among the heaviest users of AI chatbots for academic research. Yet they are simultaneously the least equipped to audit the output they receive. A teenager in Buenos Aires or Bogotá asking a chatbot about flooding projections in their regions may receive a fluent, confident answer built on outdated or geographically irrelevant data, with no signal that anything is wrong. Also based on models trained with other regions' data. Research on adolescent information processing consistently shows that fluency and confidence in a source are misread as markers of accuracy, a phenomenon amplified when the source is an AI system that speaks with institutional authority. For climate education specifically, this matters enormously. Young people are not only learners, they are the future decision makers, activists, and voters. If their foundational understanding on climate science is shaped by opaque, sorry my pronunciation, unverifiable tools during these formative years, the epistemic damage compounds over time. We are not just talking about a bad homework answer. We are talking about the cognitive infrastructure a generation will carry into the most consequential decades of the climate crisis. Let me offer 5 principles of responsibly design as my contribution. The first one, traceability. And the question is, where does climate data come from and who validates it? Every response must expose its sources, which study, which IPCC chapter, which confidence level. Without that, a chatbot cannot be a learning tool. It is simply a smoother search engine. The semantic work that Semantic Climate has done on IPCC documents is precisely the infrastructure this requires. The second, linguistic sovereignty. And the question is, whose vocabulary and knowledge systems are embedded in the model? Multilingualism is not an accessibility feature. It is a condition of cognitive equity. Climate change is not a crisis that exists only in English. Students from the Global South need reliable information in their own languages, and they need to see their local and indigenous knowledge reflected in the systems, not as a secondary translation, but as architecture. The third, ecological honesty. Are we being transparent about the environmental footprint of AI itself? A chatbot about climate change that consumes enormous amount of energy and water is a contradiction in values. If we ask young people to think systematically, the tool itself must embody that thinking. Lightweight models, efficient architectures, transparency about the system footprints, these are not marginal considerations. They are a statement of integrity. The fourth, a pedagogy of an uncertainty. And the question I am sharing with you is, how do we build systems that communicate what they don't know? A good educational chatbot that does not offer false confidence. It distinguishes between what is scientifically established, the reality of anthropogenetic climate change, and what remains genuinely open. Regional projections, typing point timelines, policy pathways. Citing Gita's word, teaching the students to live with calibrate uncertainty is, in fact, the core of scientific literacy. We are not just building a chatbot. We are rethinking how climate knowledge is shared and trust in the age of AI. The fifth thing I would like to invite you to think is about communication and power infrastructure challenge we have in Latin America. What does responsibly AI mean when connectivity is uneven? We have regions without communication and infrastructure for allowing the access of this technology. These 5 principles connect directly to the broader open knowledge infrastructure agenda. Fair data, semantic AI, multilingual designs from the group up. The chatbot is a concrete bounded test case for the kind of responsibly AI we want to build collectively. If we get the design right here, we generate a replicable model. The Global South cannot keep arriving late to design conversations. We need to be co-designers from the beginning, not use cases discovered after the fact. What we propose to build together here is not just a chatbot, it is a practice, how we want to relate the climate knowledge in the age of AI. We want to build a chatbot that is fair, legible, multilingual, and ecologically honest. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Adrianna. That was wonderful, and so helpful to have such a clear proposal for a framework for how you can build this type of chatbot. I wonder if we could switch to Robert. Your last point mentioned infrastructure, which is something that Robert has thought about a lot as the founder of GreenPT. I'll let you explain what it is. It's a fascinating project that looks both at the footprint of AI, which I think in terms of talking about climate change is a pretty relevant thing to discuss, but it also looks at different possibilities for development that are going on still. So, something to add to our toolbox, potentially.
Yeah, thank you. Do you hear me? Yeah, okay, nice.
Robert, can I just ask Robert's page so that others can see? Right now we have Adrianna's page still visible. Over to you, Robert. Welcome again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's me. Nice. Hello, everybody. My name is Robert Keus. Really Dutch last name, so you can call me Robert. I'm from the Netherlands. Entrepreneur since my 14th, and basically what I'm doing, what I try to do in the things in the companies I found is to use technology to solve or improve social challenges. I heard the word accessibility a lot, also from a language point of view, but also from accessibility point of view, people with disabilities. I'm also having a company in that space. But 1.5 years ago, I founded GreenPT, and I'm really fascinated in AI. I have a lot of technical knowledge, and basically we were not able to answer the questions of people. We got clients and other people around us. They ask us, hey, where's my data going? What is the footprint of AI? How can we, can you tell something about this? And we were not able to answer these questions. And because we are pretty technical, I have a technical team, it was basically around the DeepSeek moment when open source technology and AI became better and better, and also the models became that good that they were good enough to build products around it. And then we ask ourselves the question: can we build something? Can we make AI more sustainable? And maybe more energy efficient? Is that possible? Yeah, so that's basically when I started GreenPT. So it's a really operational project where we last year we started with building the infrastructure around it. And the first question we asked us, okay, so if we want to host these models ourselves, where do we place them, and what kind of stack and technical infrastructure do we want to use to make it as energy efficient as possible, but also from a sustainability perspective, whereas the less emission. So we ended up in France. We are in Europe. We also wanted to be hosted in Europe. But basically, the stack we have, we can put it everywhere we want to have, but we decided to put it in France. So first thing we ask ourselves, okay, where do we want to put it? And we found a hosting provider which was really transparent about their CO2 emissions, their water usage. And one of the things I think it's really important around AI is that AI always has a cost. Also, the training of the models, basically there's always an emission, but the whole landscape around AI is not transparent. And what we try to do is to communicate as transparent as possible, and also the things we don't have like a lot of influence on, to be transparent about that as well. So say the most sustainable AI provider, we also maybe want to be the most transparent AI provider, to be transparent about how everything is set up. So we also we don't open source our code, but we open source our infrastructure. So we are really open about it. Our setup, we communicate about it. So that's something people can just copy if they want to. And also the data, with the usage data and the energy data, we also open sourced it to universities. And basically the second thing we did is, so first we had the infrastructure where do we want to place the servers, and the second was okay, what kind of models do we want to use, and what kind of hardware do we want to use to the models? So in AI, it's really important what kind of models you use. You have like large language models, small, mid-size language models, and basically we decided to host only mid-size language models, which basically fit on, it's maybe a little bit technical, but on one large GPU server. Because if you, for example, take the largest DeepSeek or Kimi models, they are 15 times larger than the models we host, but they are not like 15 times better in their answers. So that was one of the reasons we decided to use mid-size and small language models. And basically last year we were building this infrastructure, and we learned a lot. Every day we are trying to make it more energy efficient as well. So recently what we did was, this is a little bit technical, but there are all kinds of different models we use. And for the smaller models, like embedding models, we need for ragging or re-rankers. They are small in memory, and they need a lot of compute. So in the past, what we had was like we had two separate servers, but right now, with a new technology, NVIDIA deployed, we were able to split one server virtually. So we were able to host two models on one server. Ihor, still hear that? Oh, somebody is. Yes, so now it's gone. Yeah. So that are things we are adding to our infrastructure as well to optimize it. Optimize it as much as possible. And because we do most of the things ourselves. Somebody is not muted. Must calendar, I think. Hello. Yeah, so that's gone. Yeah, and basically, if you have the stack yourself, if you host it yourself, you can also calculate the energy usage of the models. Like we did like a first phase in that. We are still busy with having like including all the scopes, but currently we called phase 1, where we calculate the energy usage of the model at the moment you query something, what the cost is at that moment, and we also give that back in the API, and together with the CO2 usage. And last month we also our CO2 reporting is also almost live. So it's not on the market base, but it's based on a prediction the next hour. So we know exactly what the CO2 emission is at that moment, and it makes it also interesting for. Right now we are using like chat a lot, but I think in the whole AI landscape, AI agents will be more and more relevant. With all the problems getting there as well, but I think more autonomous workflows will get deployed soon. And then also it's important, when does the task run, when does the agent is doing the task for you, and if you then can predict when is the most energy efficient moment on the grid, you can also schedule it on more moments when there's less CO2 emissions, for example. So that's something we are working on. So we have the infrastructure, we have an API with the models, and we are also building our own products where we have an AI chat and platform, and also a chatbot platform. And we're really transparent and open. So if people have questions about how we solve things, how we calculate it, we also released a file piece about calculations of the energy usage of the models. We are open to discuss. So thank you.
Thanks so much for introducing your project. I hope people will take a look at it. We've also invited Ihor here. And Lucas, if you could change the view. Exactly. Reached out to me very recently when we started the AI Learning Labs, and we had a really interesting conversation about the work that he's done with nonprofits who are building AI in different ways, but especially also some fascinating research around disinformation and disinformation in different languages and across different models. Because it's different. It looks different depending on where you look and in what language you look. And I'd love to hear more about what you have discovered researching different types of misinformation on different LLMs, and what your thoughts are on climate disinformation and how projects might address some of the challenges when they do things like this.
Hi, everyone. I hope you hear me well. So, if I may, just a bit of context. So I've been working with open data policy and advocacy for years, like opening big data sets in Ukraine used by millions. And right now, I'm speaking about AI, basically misinformation, but for me, this is an organic path, because AI changes the value of open knowledge and open data, but AI also transforms basically how we get information. And if I may, I will start how I see this informational layer, and then why I created the method and what I actually found with this method. So I see that the informational space changed, because previously we all had the information which is static. It could be book, it could be post, it could be web page, but we all could see the same text. And right now, more and more people get information from LLMs. And I call it black box in dark room. So basically what this means, that black box technology means that AI first isn't ideally traceable. So even the creators not necessarily know what the answer will be. So this is black box technology. And second, it is in dark room. Why? Because people are talking to AI, basically getting information in their private chat. So I cannot see your chats and the answers AI provides to you. So this is a radical change in the informational environment, because black box is generating the information in dark room, right? So basically, if we care about the quality of information, the reliability of information, we need to address this challenge by creating new methods, how we really know what AI is saying to users. And basically, this is the global challenge we face in wherever field we can speak about. Given the time Ukrainian, we as Ukrainians are attacked by Russian narratives, for instance, in terms of disinformation. In terms of climate, we have disinformation campaigns or different theories which aren't factually correct. In terms of elections, we as citizens are attacked also by disinformation. So this is an issue for any field where we care about the reliability of information. And despite the chat that is created specifically for climate or general purpose model, the challenge is the same. So basically, I decided to create the method how we can basically evaluate reliably, and in terms of really metrics that we can have, what if the AI is giving the factual information to person on the prompt request or not. So I've run the first audit about Russia-Ukrainian conflict, and I asked the factually correct the questions about the facts. So basically about the well-established facts, I asked the question in different languages, and I made this research as part of my EU fellowship project. And what I found out, first, so what is everything that I'm saying is public. So basically both the data is public, the report is public, everything is available. So we see first that LLMs provide different answers depending on the language. And we already heard that colleagues told about low resources languages. So basically LLMs are usually tested in English language, right? But LLM have different behavior depending on the language of the prompt. So this is first. And we really need to test LLM in different languages. Second, that in my research, we found out the filters for correct answers. So even one LLM was writing the correct answer, and then the control layer basically hid the answer. And this was the Russian LLM, and basically about Bucha massacre, it created the correct answer, but then it hid it from the user. So basically, we should speak why this matters, because for the LLM behavior, not only the training data matters, but also the control layer is crucial. So basically, we need to address this. And also one finding which was, I believe, quite new for the community was about false balance. So what we see, usually LLMs tend to be neutral in their answers. And this is actually great in general, situations we want LLM to be neutral and objective. But when we come to a factual baseline, when the question is against some fact, the neutrality is actually part of disinformation. So for instance, if we ask about climate, or if we ask about if the earth is flat or I don't know, round, right? Circle. So basically we do not want the LLM to say there are different opinions, or for instance, if the climate is changing or not. If there is some factual information behind the answer, it should be stated directly by LLM, and this will be the correct answer. But general use LLMs tend to be neutral. This is how they are programmed. And this is actually a challenge for all of us, both using general purpose LLMs or building our own solutions on, I don't know, open weights models, etc. So my point, to make a short summary of what I'm doing, is that first, we have the informational layer, which is new in terms of how it works. So we should have some new methods how we actually evaluate if the information is correct. Because LLMs generate answers in private chats, and we both cannot predict the answer. and we cannot see the private chat. And this is an issue, and we need to address it. And secondly, that LLMs, the same model can share the correct answers in one language and be wrong in or specifically sharing misinformation in other language. So for instance, you create climate chat for English users, but it is available, I don't know, in Ukrainian, for instance, or in Polish or in Spanish. And there will be wrong information about the climate. And basically my point is that we need to create this layer against all models, despite it is like private models, open models, whatever. We need to track how the LLM is answering on crucial points for us. And I created method how we can like scope this to be measurable. But basically the point is that we need to do this not only once, but monitor. Because for instance, there might be data poisoning, there might be some attacks, there might be change in informational environment, some new source might change the answers. So we need to monitor LLMs on high risk topics to notice when they start sharing misinformation, in which language, on which topic, to be able to react depending on our position. So that's it. If you have any questions, I'll drop a link to the research. Once again, everything is open, both the raw data, the conclusions, the articles, everything is there.
Thanks so much. we've heard a lot now on the different considerations related to how do we build a responsible climate chatbot. Gita, have you picked up on any questions in the chat, or is there something that you would like to ask the speakers? I don't hear you.
Solana, can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Great. Yes, there are. So there've been questions in the chat box that Peter and I think Alex has been helping us. Thank you very much, Alex, to address a lot of questions that we have in the chat bot. The question I have right now, fantastic presentations, Ihor and Robert. Can I put a question on trust and misinformation and responsible AI to Ihor just now? Ihor, you've studied disinformation and you've studied the differences across AI models. What worries you most when through conversation rather than traditional media? Did you get that question, Ihor?
I didn't hear everything, but as far as I heard the half of your words, you asked about what's the difference comparing to classical media and what's the difference for LLMs and what is my concern, right?
Yes. What worries you most about, when information starts moving through conversational AI rather than traditional media? Yes.
Okay, so there are 2 points that I would like to really address. First, just to repeat myself, that we do not see this information, so it is not transparent for public what is the output of AI model. So this is first, because all the previous media we usually had, they were relatively easy to analyze and to spot some disinformation campaign, etc. So this is first. But second is very specific. I didn't mention it before. So that the model output depends on the semantics of the prompt itself. So this is a big change. So basically, the same AI model could provide materially different answer or chat. I don't know, model, chat, wherever you might name it in different ways. But you might ask materially the same question using different semantics, basically changing one word in your question, and you will have different answers. And this is a challenge for us because imagine that we have some climate issue. If we do not have neutral language, so user is already biased to some language he is asking. Because how we get information from LLM? We send some words, right? So we send some message, prompt, and get the answer. So the answer of the LLM is depending on the specific words we use. And this is really challenging situation because, for instance, you give this great training data for user, which is created out of correct words that the scientific community is using. but the user is asking the model in his own question, which is, I don't know, from like some theories of flat earth or wherever, that climate change is like some misconception created by, I don't know, like by someone, you know. So if the user is asking in the language that is already biased, so the AI will try to give the biased answer. And this is quite hard to spot. So basically, therefore, when we test, what I said, that my idea is that we need to test models and monitor answers. We need to monitor them not only on the questions that are set correctly or one prompt questions, but we really need to stress test it with the wrong language, with biased language, with like counter arguments from the user that says, no, this is not correct. I heard from TV like that this is not true, that, I don't know, animals aren't dying, you know, or wherever, or that the temperature isn't rising because it's like colder in this winter at my home. So basically this makes it so hard basically to monitor this and to make this system reliable across different languages that people are using, not in terms of language that Ukrainian or Russian, but in terms of semantics that user is asking. And for me, this is like very challenging because this is the technology, how the LLM is based. This is not something, this is like the core of technology, that it reacts to the language markers, and we need actually to stress test it.
Exactly. I do have a follow-up question now that you've mentioned this. Ihor, depends upon if you're comfortable to respond. Do you think conversational guardrails, they genuinely reduce misinformation risk, or do we also need to have stronger forms of transparency and traceability in the models that we build?
I actually do not have any simple answer. Like wherever, from my perspective, wherever like we can try right now, we should try. Basically, frankly speaking, like wherever method we might try to have the reliable answer, we need to try it, because like as I said, it is a black box technology, so therefore we do not have like 100% answers. Will it work or no? You know.
Very nice. Thank you, Ihor. There is a question in the chat by Kat. Kat, I think also address this question to you, Ihor. She says, Ihor may have answered this part, but my own research on academic engagement with public knowledge platforms such as Wikipedia found a real emphasis gap. What scholars intend and what public audiences receive often diverge sharply, especially when nuances compressed. So a chatbot compresses by design. And so then her question is it possible in the system that is being proposed for a user to actually see what's been compressed in some way? And the question is open to everybody who wants to answer. Ihor, do you want to answer?
Like,
please.
Yeah. If Kath could try, for instance, Notebook LM from Google, this is the specific like chatbot created with this like precise reason. Like, so Notebook LM is like environment created by Google when you have the sources driven chat in which you have like this generalized answer based on the sources of information, but there is like link that shows you the initial data from which the summary was made. So basically you already have this technology by Google, one of the biggest AI providers in the world, as an example. So yes, basically it is possible, it is already done for, and it is one of the greatest tools like available out there for free, by the way. So if you haven't yet tested it, please, I really highly recommend you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ihor. We'll move on. There is a question for Robert. Robert, are you still here? Because I remember you probably had to skip out. So the question for you,
here.
Robert. Brilliant. Robert, the question is, GreenPT has worked with sustainability, knowledge, and open systems. What kinds of climate knowledge do you think are currently underrepresented or difficult to translate into an AI system?
Yeah, do you mean from a technical perspective or in any way?
Yes, from a technical perspective, also from the kinds of climate knowledge. So there are so many.
I think Gita knows,
Yeah.
but you can answer.
Yeah, so yeah, from a technical perspective, I think there are a couple of things lagging right now, is especially the training of the models, which is really a black box, especially in the open source space, where we use more and more also models from China or also from the US, from Google. We don't know yeah, what kind of technology is used to train the models in terms of infrastructure and GPUs, for example. So that's something I'm really curious about, obviously. But what we can do as a community is focus also more on standardization in how we want to calculate the energy usage, and also how to display this, for example, in APIs to make from the beginning a standard. So if the larger companies are going to report, that we all say, okay, this is the way you should report, and this is also the things we want to know to have like a valid research. Because what's happening now is that Mistral is doing research and is releasing reports. Microsoft is doing it, Google is doing it, and they all are doing it in a different way. And basically, if you read the white papers, is that somewhere they leave a lot of information out, or it's written in their favor, or yeah. So yeah, I think more transparency on the training side, but also more standardization on the reporting side. Yeah.
Thanks, Robert. I wonder, Matthew, because all this, how do we build a responsible chatbot, started because of a dream that you had of doing something with your project, the Climate Academy. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what your hopes are for what a chatbot could do in terms of education, but maybe also how this conversation maybe has shifted your opinion or introduced you to any new perspectives that you hadn't considered at the outset.
Yeah, thank you. I think if I start at the kind of ambition level and talk about what I'd love this to achieve, knowing that these are just the very first steps. In my situation as a teacher in a school is a microcosm of the situation that is there in the world about misinformation, this problem of emphasis, or just illiteracy, people just not knowing basic things. So the origin of the Climate Academy was that as a 40-year-old, more or less, I went to a talk and it toasted my brain. I mean, I just couldn't believe what I was hearing, because I understood climate from a systems perspective for the first time. And suddenly it was not about recycling projects and plastic and the kind of blah, blah, blah. Suddenly this was a systemic existential threat. And I was illiterate about that up to that point. And so suddenly everything got reframed. And then I started the academy in school, and that was 12, 13 years ago now. And so what I've been trying to do is establish within my own school a community of students who could be game changers, who can bring this kind of, let's say, call it systems understanding to a wider community, first in the school, and now because the Climate Academy has grown in size, it's now sort of global project in many schools around the world. So the issues that I'm pointing at here are that there is a lot of, there's a massive range of climate literacy, from the deniers to this huge middle band of people who understand it more or less, or yeah, exactly, more or less. And then you have this very high technical IPCC level scientific stuff. And having to navigate through all of that misinformation or half information or full information is truly problematic. So what I would love from a bot is that it gives clarity. It's able to give clarity based on the truth, and it's able to navigate some of the complexities. Now, navigating the complexities, of course, I know is a much more complex issue, but as at a very simple starting point, the Climate Academy that I've designed, we have a student book, and this is based in the IPCC reports fundamentally. It starts with the natural sciences, so planetary boundaries, carbon budgets, how close we are to various tipping points, and then it goes into the human sciences of it all, and why, given, let's say, the drama of how close we are to these tipping points and so on, why is there so much inertia politically, economically, socially, psychologically, etc. So that's the scope of this book. And it's the starting point for systems-informed action within the Climate Academy. So the bot would, to read this, we know as a very, okay, it's 360 pages for a 360-degree view, but that's a pretty slim bit of data to crunch through. And then you're not wading into all the misinformation in the wider web. So this is like a clear island of authoritative science, which solves one issue. So yeah, that's a lot. My head is spinning because there's so many things which you've raised in these things. Like what I've understood just in these first things is that just inviting a language bot to read this language training doesn't come from nowhere. So all this issue about, yeah, the hand which reaches out to the reliable information, how do you make this hand reliable? That's very complex. So I understand that that's a great complexity. And the issue about neutrality or lack of emphasis, again, that's a huge issue, because just like the BBC in the UK has been ripped apart by trying to be neutral in climate, but its neutrality ended up endorsing climate deniers. And just, and that is a historic problem. So with good intention, even, they wanted to be balanced, and in the end, they just spread misinformation. So how do we navigate that? And we do have one, to finish my little thing, the Climate Academy has been built and constructed over time in consultation with leading experts in climate science. And we do have something called a CRITEX index. And this set of numbers create basically a very simple guardrail for the truth in terms of data. So again, setting up that kind of fence of what is reliable in terms of data could be a really helpful way to protect against misinformation. But of course, I understand, and I'm open to all of this advice that all these experts out there, like trying to train a bot or create a bot which can negotiate between data, language, and so on is extremely complex. And maybe if I just finish with one example, a core metaphor in the Climate Academy textbook is that a 2-degree temperature is like a fever for the human body. And you can't function very well. Most people don't even want to watch Netflix when they have a 2-degree fever. 4-degree fever, that's hyperpyrexia, and you're going to die in 24 hours. Now, that if you can give people numbers on climate change, but they don't necessarily understand the impact of what it means. So you can talk about what is 2 degrees, and you can get all the data about 2 degrees, but people don't understand that's quite a serious fever state for the planet. And that 4 degrees is the collapse of human civilization. Now, in order to kind of translate those numbers into reliable metaphors or cultural images which people can connect to, again, that's very powerful, but it's also very complex. So these are all the things that are kind of swimming around in my head as you're talking. Fundamentally, I'm committed to making the science of climate publicly available. Everything which I do is for free, or my videos, or my thing, it's all trying to get people climate literate. And this could be massively accelerated by artificial intelligence, but I understand it's a minefield.
Thanks for sharing those reflections and what your hopes and concerns are. I think Ihor wanted to chime in with a response. And as I just wrote in the public chat, that if you would like to make a spoken comment, if you're listening and you're working on something similar, or you have advice for the Climate Academy or questions for any of the speakers, please raise your hand and I might call on you. Ihor.
Yeah, I wanted to add some insights from my research about the issue that Matthew actually raised, because it's very difficult question how we should address neutrality, right? I do not have like simple answer for you, but I might share with you the insights from my research, how different LLMs actually do this right now. So what my research showed, and for me, it was very interesting. When we asked the questions about the misinformation, which are relevant to misinformation, we saw that OpenAI in general provided us like correct answer with no extra context about disinformation. So for instance, we asked like something like, did Ukraine start the war with Russia, for instance, right? And OpenAI LLM would answer, no, Russia attacked Ukraine. So this is like plain fact, nothing else. Grok from XAI, Twitter, right? It has a different strategy. It actively takes all the propaganda narratives, but says that they are incorrect. So it rebutes propaganda, right? When you ask some neutral question, it says, like, here is the fact, you have the fact. But here are all these theories that are wrong and misinformation campaigns. And this is like the completely two opposite sides of LLM behavior. And I would say that other models like Gemini and Claude, they are trying to keep this balance even regarding the misinformation. Like there is no simple truth and stuff like that. So they tend more to this behavior. And in one case, what was different from Russia AI, Yandex? So Russia has also a powerful model, Yandex. When there is like some specific disinformation narrative, it tries to give the precise link to the source. So for instance, there is state media saying that, I don't know, Ukrainians are Nazis or there are biolabs. So the model not only answers, but it gives you the link. So basically it takes some part of responsibility from itself, sending the user to a link. So why I wanted to contribute, because Matthew really said that even for BBC, it's very hard. For LLMs, it's very hard. So this is so hard societal questions, how we need to deal with this. And my research showed that all LLMs behave in different strategies, so there is no, and basically if you create a climate bot, you need to decide how it will react to this sort of questions and narratives. And this is tricky.
Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, the choice of model seems more important than ever after hearing both you and Robert explain some of the differences between them. Alok, I'm opening the mic to you for a question or comment, and then we'll hear from Jorge afterwards. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alok Devas. Can you hear me well? Yeah. So I'm from the Florida International University here in Miami, and I come from a completely different background from what you all are. I have just started to dabble in AI, but my background had been in global public health, One Health, and those kind of things. So what I'm looking at this one, and it's great with Adrianna, Robert, Ihor, Matthew, you guys have done a fantastic job, and then it is opening up much more questions than findings and solution. I think this is the right time to get into it. So I see very analogous situation what is happening even in the health field, because the information what we get, when we ask to any of the AI how biased it is, whether the information is collected, who is putting out those information. So these are very, very relevant and very related questions what we're looking at from the climate point of view. And that climate is also it's very much embedded into our health, the environmental health, and the One Health, where we are much more now getting into where ecosystem health, animal health, and human health come together. So it's a massive amount of data. We have to deal with it. So to do all these things, and after hearing all these things, the challenge is what we have. The first challenge is, of course, the infrastructure and requiring low broadband issue, which is the primary thing at the moment. Of course, the energy efficiency, as Robert brought it out. One thing which I'm thinking is that maybe, which is challenge also in the health area, the terminology and the terms of the harmonization of the terminology and terms which we can put together, so that if someone is talking in Ukraine, or somebody is talking in Congo, or somebody is talking in Tanzania or United States, can we talk onto the similar languages? Then I also have inclusiveness, which has fair representation, as Gitu also pointed out there, Gitanjali, Dr. Yadav pointed out, and the other people also. This I see even in our field, that, for example, if I'm looking for some editors, or if even the reviewer for the article, I see that's only very, very biased. Only those for the journals, those are from represented, not fairly represented. So how we can do that? So that's, again, another important point. Sustainability is another one we talked about. Reliability and traceability, where the data is coming from. And this is where I think I will also touch on what Ihor mentioned, is traceability, or the data who has put out, how neutral is it? It is very contextualized. The one data, what you said that maybe disinformation, that data is also coming from somewhere. How do we vet onto it that this is the correct information? So how can we contextualize and then take that data, because the people actually on the ground, they may be suffering, but it doesn't filter out when it comes on the top. So that's there. And of course, the other thing which I was also thinking is that are we thinking of putting it as a central place to curate the data, and possibly it talks about all from the information, all the LLM, and then the data comes out from there. But how do we decide that the data which comes out? Open system is good, that you are getting representation from everywhere, but how, if we want, because I have seen a model in our health system that, let's say PubMed, or let's say there are databases which collects the QH, and then it goes into, all the people go into there, and then that kind of gives a guarantee that, okay, this data is authentically curated. The curation and the access, who can access it and how this can be accessed. And one of the most important things which I think is that, the technology and all that, we can contextualize, whether it's from global south, global north, global west, wherever it is coming from. So those data may be much more reliable, much more relevant. How do we work on that? So thank you for, I'm really, really glad to be here. And thank you, Adrianna, Robert, Ihor, Matthew. You guys have put together very nice this thing. And as Matthew said, my head is spinning too a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing those reflections on language, accessibility. I will switch to Jorge. If any of the speakers would like to respond to anything, you can also put your hands up. And we are still taking questions from anybody or comments from anybody who wants to participate, who's listening. We'll go to Jorge now. Hi.
Hello, everyone. This is an excellent conversation. I heard brilliant things. I just want to add a bit more in the area where we at the University of Gloucestershire are working, and it's going specifically into the language of AI, but from an ecological point of view, which is based on something that is called ecolinguistics. So ecolinguistics try to find within languages, or within language in general, what are the actual stories that we are telling? Because we might be telling things that from the point of view, let's say, of if information might be correct or not, and all of that, will be worked through many things that we've been working here through grounding by a RAG, by system prompts, or by using notebook LM, or even knowledge graph. There are ways of grounding AI in a different in a specific position. But there are stories that exist in society, especially in Western society, or dominant languages, which are the main ones where AI was trained, that are embedded in the actual language. For example, the idea of growth, that economic growth is something that is always good, is something that we always want. And that economic growth actually is at odds with climate or environmental ethics. So, but if you ask a chatbot something how to make money, it will come with whatever. It wouldn't think about anything related to climate. The other thing is anthropocentrism. For a Western society, we are at the top of the universe, the people, and we don't care much about animals or any. For us, as a society, nature is a resource, is the word we use. So those stories are all embedded in society. There is also patriarchy. We live in a patriarchal society. So what we are trying to do in this project is try to change all those stories and bring a new vision. For example, if you ask a chatbot, how can I take out my garden and put a driveway? A chatbot will actually tell you, okay, just take everything out, cut all the trees, and then start laying concrete there, and you have a driveway. But it's not considering at all that you are all the life you are killing or destroying by destroying a garden. Same thing you ask, tell me about Coca-Cola is an example we always use. And it will say, oh, Coca-Cola is an iconic brand, is known for years and blah, blah, blah. And he wouldn't say that actually is the top plastic polluter in history, for example. And that's things that are embedded, that it's very difficult to change that through, let's say, knowledge bases or RAG or grounding. It's mostly about changing the language itself that we use. And that's a problem that already exists beyond AI. It's in the news, in everywhere, we will see these stories. But the problem with AI is that AI amplifies it, because AI or chatbots are the major influencer in history. I think 100 billion people at least are talking to 100 million, sorry, people are talking to AI every week. So minimum, probably more than that. But that means that the stories that chatbots are telling are really taking ground in our thinking. So that just wanted to bring this idea of ecolinguistic and the problem of language itself within AI.
Thank you, Jorge. I hope you will put links to your project in the chat, so or repost links to your project.
Okay, yeah.
So
Thank you.
people can take a look. Would anybody else like to chime in now? Matthew, you had your hand up momentarily. You made some of your comments in the chat. And Robert,
I have a question for Matthew. Can I ask that?
Oh, you're back, Gita. Hi.
Sorry, yeah, I keep dropping back in.
Yeah.
Matthew, I have a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, particularly from the point of view of what we are planning in this project, see, Climate Academy works with young learners, as we know very well from your presentation, as well as from having known you for so long. The Climate Academy and these young learners of yours are increasingly engaging through screens rather than textbooks, of course. What, in your opinion, Matthew, would make a climate chatbot genuinely meaningful or useful in that learning journey of these youngsters in the modern era? Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think it is really healthy when it's part of a wider ecosystem. So no chatbot on its own is going to fix everything. But if that chatbot is part of a wider ecosystem of knowledge and learning and projects and activity and community and so on, then it's extremely powerful. So I think you have to see everything in that sense. So if students are active in a project, for example, my students at the moment are doing a survey on climate literacy. So they're going on the streets, they're asking people, do you know what a tipping point is, for example? 3 questions, and one of them is, do you know what a tipping point is? Almost nobody that we've interviewed has got a good answer to that question. So the thing is that kind of engagement or learning which is driven by projects and projects which are rooted in science and scientific literacy and so on, if you can have a chatbot that is plugged into that, that's an enormous help, because they sometimes just want quick responses. They just, oh, what was the data for that or something? So I think it's about creating an ecosystem of reliable information which is plugged into a community which is also, let's say, reliable.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was, Matthew, following up from your answer, I'd like to just go on to Peter Murray Rust. Peter is my co-founder in Semantic Climate. And Peter, you know, you've heard all the conversations we've had till now. You've heard Matthew's answer. What, in your opinion, Peter, you know, because we're going to be doing this design together, how do we design an educational AI system in the larger, you know, wider, longer term vision? An educational AI system that encourages curiosity and critical thinking, rather than what we are seeing as academics, you know, passive dependence on generated answers. Would you like to comment,
right.
Peter?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, brilliantly.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think the thing that really got to me was that Matthew was working with late high schoolers, right? And I think that is the community that really matters. The people who are educated, who care, who think about the world, who are deeply worried about all this, and they want to do something about it. And they're underrepresented at the moment in all of this discourse and the technology. Now, there are some very brilliant people in high school. Of course, there's Greta Thunberg, who's changed our view of the world. But in our own group, we had a 15-year-old from India working in Singapore, and he created one of the key tools that we had. And it was a delight to work with him. His energy and his dedication was fantastic. I would say if we can get a growing community of young people at that level, then I think we will do a lot to change the world. So we try and build some sort of substrate for it, so that when they come in, they've got something to work with. They all know about AI. They all know about having their own machines and doing their own thing, and communication networks and so on. But give them a focus here, and then say to them, you run this, you understand the questions you want answered, go for it. Does that make sense, Gita?
Yes, absolutely. And this is something we need to absolutely keep in mind, Peter, when we are working to build the chatbot that we call. So I would want to, Peter, in continuation of, all right, so I want to put a question, not just to you, Peter, but to everybody in the room as participants. And we are going to keep that as the closing synthesis question. Don't answer it now, but in your minds or on a piece of paper, I would love for everyone here, Alok, you, Igor, Jorge, everyone, including Solana, to briefly, in a rapid fire style, in one sentence, what is the single most important thing that we should get right when building climate AI systems for the future? So give us a line, put it in the chat box, or tell us later. But for now, I would just like to move to Adrianna if she's still around. Adrianna, I know this is an odd time for you. It's very early in the morning, isn't it? Can I ask a question to you? Can I put a question? Oh, Adrianna, are you there? Okay, I think Adrianna might have left. All right,
No,
all right, in that case.
she's unmuted.
Okay, Adrianna, are you there? Can you hear me? Did I put my question in the chat box for you, Adrianna? Will that be better? Or can you speak up and respond live? Back to you, Solana. Then let's
let's try the chat. Put the question in the chat, and hopefully we'll see it.
Yeah, I'll do that. Carry on, please. Yeah,
Robert, you have your hand up, and in the meanwhile, let's think about the answers to Gita's concluding question. I love that. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, I already wrote it down somewhere. Yeah, so I think one of the things resonated also from the speakers was the language problems we have with the LLMs. And maybe this is also a question for Ihor, and I'm thinking about it also a lot. Is basically it's two questions. One is, do you think AI was deployed too fast to everybody? And the second one, do you think a chat interface is the best way to interact with AI? This was a So that were questions like I'm asking myself a lot. Obviously, as GreenPT as well. So basically, what I always tell people is, I think the reason we use a chat is basically because Sam Altman sent a tweet and said, "Hey, we have a chat where you can ask anything." And then we got ChatGPT, and everybody was using it. But if you go back, the question I always have, is a chat the best interface to interact with AI? I believe it's not. I also don't think, maybe it's a little bit against what we are doing, but the real value in AI is maybe also not productivity of people. It is not like you asking anything to your data. It's nice, but does it really solve a problem we had before? Or should we use it more in fundamental problems like climate problems, creating new materials for making solar energy more efficient, for example? But now everybody's using the chat, and that's also from a language perspective. If you say something in Dutch, you get a totally different answer when you ask the same question in English. Yeah, then the question is it even solvable? That's raised hands, people. Yeah, that was what I want to say.
Adrianna, are you?
Yeah, Adrianna, I was going to say the same. Adrianna.
I'm here. Gita, sorry, I was driving. That's why I didn't answer before. But I would like to close my participation thinking about how we can help the future generations to use this technology that is amazing in a responsible way, and at the same time, how we help them to maintain the critical thinking. I think this is the biggest challenge.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adrianna. Your work at the intersection of education and emerging technologies, because you work at this interface, what, in your opinion, are the opportunities and the risks when AI becomes part of how younger generations learn about climate change?
The biggest challenge Yes, I am hearing. The biggest challenge I am seeing is they are using, in my country, for example, massively, but they don't understand profoundly how this technology is built behind. So they believe in AI as I don't know how to say, as a person who knows everything, but they don't understand the bias, the importance of the data we use to train, and also the aspect of cybersecurity. Today are people with the capability of influence in the answers and also contaminate the data. So it's a complex world. We have a lot of opportunities because we can access more knowledge in an amazing time. If I think in the past, I have to go to the library to look the book, to read the book, brief the subject. Now you can make a question and you have all the answers. But that's why I think the most important is to teach them how to use it and to be clear that there are many aspects we need to be care of. And critical thinking is the soft skill we need to train the most.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adrianna. I have put one more question for the panel, but back to you, Solana. You can read out that question so all of us can answer together.
Sure. How do we ensure that climate AI does not become another technology designed primarily for wealthy institutions and English-speaking users? So basically, what would genuinely Global South-friendly climate AI look like? Alok, you also had a comment? Anybody is welcome to raise their hand if you want to say something. We'll be finishing.
Yeah, I think it's primarily to Robert's question earlier, or Robert's comment. I was just trying to address that. And part of it is also addressed recently in one of the panels here. Because, this has been the history of any technology, that the technology comes first, and then after the policies and the guardrails are put in afterwards. So I think we are at the right stage when we need to put together things so that it is much more meaningful, much more relevant for the society, for the people. And we are just at that cusp that we have to work towards it. And this is a great initiative. So this is just to address a little bit of a part of what Robert was asking, that is this too early to open it up to the people? But yeah, I mean, this is how it starts. Any technology comes, then you decide the policy and the guardrails and how we are going to go about it. So this is just the right time.
Thank you, Alok. Alex, you had a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to, sorry, I haven't turned my camera on yet. Just a second. Yeah, hi, Alex Stenson, based in Uruguay, was with Wikimedia for 11 years, so I'm very much passionate about building a bottom-up, many languages first version of public knowledge. And one of the things that's like really alarmed me about both the AI models that are the hyperscale ones and the small ones is that they're missing like the ability to nuance without non-economically viable narratives, right? So like I'm doing monitoring on public interest climate topics in AI, and almost all of them are like citing over and over and over again economy-focused news sources, or like corporate communications, or organizations that are selling things, right? And the problem with climate is those things tend to consolidate around like banks and finance in the US and Europe, right? And they don't actually represent what we need for climate solutions, which is like a really diverse body of locally politically acceptable solutions, right? And of things that are appropriate to the context we're operating in. And so I'm really wondering this is what my project is working on, is I'm actually going to try to find all the civil society organizations that have evidence-based research on this stuff. But I'm wondering how other people are thinking about discovering those sources of text or knowledge for climate solutions in local contexts, because we can look at civil society, but that's one way of looking at it. But I feel like there's a lot of creativity already in local contexts that we're just like not documenting at all anywhere. And Wikimedia, I just got off a call. I stepped away and then came back to talk to some community organizers in Africa who want to work on documenting climate knowledge locally, but the best way for them to do it is with visual knowledge and video in local languages, not necessarily in the way we think of it for training LLMs, which is like big documents with structurable text and all these things. So I'm just wondering how other people are thinking about that problem, because I think Gita's like provocative question is like, it's like, which knowledges are we collecting in an AI usable way? And like, how do we find them? Because AI necessarily has to scale, right? And so we have to find at scale, which means curation at scale, which is just like a lot of complexity that I don't think we've dealt with since, you know, the Wikipedia era of 1.0. Like we kind of skipped that in Web 2.0.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Where do we get the information in the first place? I was going to throw it back to Gita, and I think she just got disconnected. I wonder if there's anyone else from the Semantic Climate team who would like to take it on. Renu, you're still here. Would you like to answer? Would you have an answer to Alex's question? How have you been thinking about this in the context of semantic climate?
I lost the
Sorry, do you ask me to answer?
Yeah, just can you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Your sound is also not so great. I was wondering if you had an answer about how semantic climate is thinking about surfacing knowledge from Global South in a way that's usable for AI, maybe beyond what is in academic journals or beyond what is in text. Is that something that you've thought about?
Am I audible? No, not yet.
I'm sorry, I put you on the spot. Gita, you're back, I think? I'm gone.
I just got glitched out again for the nth time. Solana, are you speaking to Semantic? I mean, are you talking to Peter and me and our team, or is the question
Yes.
to Matthew or Pi?
Yes. I was going to throw the question. I was going to throw the question back to you after Alex's comment.
Okay. So Alex, back to you. I'm sorry I keep glitching and then I would step on somebody when I come back in. Please.
Well, the question was, or it was a comment, but it was about surfacing knowledge from the Global South beyond what we find in academic journals and text, and how we usually think about collecting knowledge for AI. If we're thinking videos or audio, or where else should we be thinking about finding information about climate change? What have you been thinking about this yourself?
Oh, wonderful question. Absolutely. It's complex, first of all, but I would like to answer it in terms of, at least from my point of view, from my lab here in New Delhi, India. We've been trying to, and we spent a lot of time looking at the kinds of data sets we get or not get access to. So we've been trying to work with a lot of national parks. India has multiple biodiversity hotspots, and there are multiple national parks, and we've been trying to connect with the Ministry of Forests, Environment and Climate Change in order to, get the data for individual parks and regions, and how over time they've been impacted in the sense what kind of species used to be there earlier in the flora and now are not, how invasive species have come into these regions, what kind of human-wildlife conflict has arisen because of the buffer regions in the protected areas and outside of them. So that's one aspect of collecting data, and that is mostly, Solana, as you say, camera traps data, surveys made with, conversations with forest officials, audio data sets, also black and white images and clips. But another thing that we've been trying to do is to address or quantify climate justice. And when you speak of climate justice, most of the papers globally that we write about are individual stories of justice having reached the people that it should or shouldn't. And in the global south, it is a major issue. What we thought was a mathematical mechanism. Oh, are you able to hear me? I think I'm glitching out again. Congratulations. I just can't get through today.
I'm hearing you perfectly. I'm hearing you good.
But I'm going to keep my answer short because I don't know when I might glitch out. So for climate justice, we find that India particularly has a brilliantly, hugely enormous data set structured that can be used to, in the large sense, assess climate justice. India has had a national green tribunal and legal justice. When I say justice, truly legal justice. The Indian grid for judicial grid has made all the data completely available online for you to access. Particularly if you're a researcher, you can request access to cases, actual climate cases related to biodiversity, related to climate change over the last 12 years, and how pendency in those cases has been happening, how the cases, have they been closed at all, to what extent were the cases not closed, which were the cases not closed, which are still pending, and in what cases were we able to address, was the nation able to address the issue that was there. So that was, from my point of view, to answer your question, would be the judiciary data for the National Green Tribunal for climate change is absolutely available and structured for us to use in AI, which some of our students, especially Kamran, one of our very young, fresh BTech students, is, he started working with us during his graduation holidays, summer holidays, and he's been able to build a model that is able to, using RAG again, able to address a lot of questions about justice in India. That's one place where the data became, it has always been lying there. Nobody has thought about using AI on it. And the other one is these human-wildlife conflicts, which have arisen because of the changes that we observe over the last couple of decades, and more so in the recent decade, in terms of climate change. And there it is very, very, very difficult to get that data. Does that answer your question, Solana? The two examples?
Yes, I think so. I was paraphrasing Alex's question, so I don't want to take.
Oh, does that answer your question, Alex? It is a complex space, and yeah, we are trying very hard.
Yeah, we can definitely follow up afterwards. I'm excited to talk.
Yes. Would Peter like to answer this question? Peter has spent almost a decade working with young people in India and addressing the question of multilinguality and addressing the question of different kinds of data sets with youngsters.
Well, I'll be brief, but one of the things that's impressed me about Latin America is that it regards scholarly publication as a public good and not as personal aggrandizement or organizational prestige. We've started looking at the work that people like Adrianna Garcia in Mexico has done on Redalic, which is a Latin American collection of publications, mainly in Spanish and Portuguese, and these are very neglected by the northern information harvesters. I'd also say that, as Gita said, the grey literature from organizations is really valuable because it's structured, it's purposeful, and so I think building tools to harvest grey literature and and non-northern languages and outlets is certainly possible.
Fascinating. I had never even heard that term before, grey literature.
It's things like organizational reports and so on. So, for example, one project that we've started and is Adrianna still here because she's a co-chair of this, is with CoData, the of the international scientific unions, and so we have a project to collect data from organizations and review it and automate this. And given Gita's interest in plants and agriculture, that's probably the first place we'll start, so that it's not indigenous knowledge quite, but it is country-specific knowledge that you don't see in what Springer Nature and the rest of them do.
Thank you.
There's a lot of country-specific knowledge, region-specific knowledge, locality-specific knowledge that is recorded, being documented, but not brought out into the global mainstream, places that you find literature. That's why grey literature, and we're really making an effort to pull it out, Solana.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying. We're almost at time. I want to thank everybody for their patience with this long session. And especially with everybody who was kicked out and came back and kicked out and came back. Gita, thank you for your persistence. Thanks to everybody who stuck with the conversation and for the great questions. I'll hand it back to you, Gita. If Ihor or Adrianna have any final comments that they would like to make, that they're also welcome. Robert had to step out and said goodbye in the chat. Again, my name is Solana. If you'd like to be in touch, I'll put my email address in the chat, but I'll pass it on to you, Gita, and anybody else.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much, Solana. I would like to just say that I've also put my LinkedIn link page on the chat box, and you're welcome to get in touch with me. Already, Alex and I are talking at the site to get on. If anybody wants to interact with us, collaborate, absolutely more than welcome. We together in the world, collaborate.com. That's my closing line. Thank you.
In that case, thank you, everybody. I'll set everybody free. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it a lot. Thank you, Ihor.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.